Joining us now, E.W. Jackson. E.W. Jackson ran for lieutenant governor against Ralph Northam as a Republican in 2013, losing there to Ralph Northam. And he put a statement out the other day, and I kind of remember this. Let me just title E.W.'s press conference. He says, Black lieutenant governor candidate, that would be E.W. Jackson, says Ralph Northam refused to shake his hand after Virginia lieutenant governor television debate. And I remember that distinctively, in the mainstream media here in Virginia, the legacy media blew it off, never covered it. E.W., good to have you with us, sir.
Be with you, John.
I remember that debate, and I remember the fact you put your hand out, as I recall, 2 times, and you didn't shake it. Now, after it was over, he said he never saw it, but kind of hard to not see somebody stick your hand out.
I touched him. I know, he because when I assumed the same thing. He didn't see me, and then I patted him. And then he just absolutely refused to move. He refused to even acknowledge me. Notice even at the he never even looked at me. So he was intentionally acting like I was the invisible man. So, I said then, based upon my interactions with him, I really believed then that Ralph Northam was a closet racist, not just from that incident, but just from the general demeanor that he had toward me. Because, look, I met Terry McAuliffe, and Terry was friendly, and I didn't agree with him, obviously, on anything, but he was friendly, he was decent, he was gentlemanly. But Ralph Northam, no, he had a condescending, nasty attitude, and now we're finding out why.
You've called for him to resign. I want to read something you put out in your statement. You said, if the mainstream media had spent as much time investigating Ralph Northam as they did investigating me in 2013, this information would have been discovered, and the outcome of the lieutenant governor's race might have been different. Now we learn this. I kind of agree with that, because the legacy media here in Virginia, the fake newsers, spent all their time investigating E.W. Jackson, what he said back in 2005 or this or that, or some sermon you had, and they would take it out of text and blow it out of proportion.
John, they went all the way back to my hometown and investigated my childhood in a foster home to see whether my claim that I didn't have an indoor toilet in that home was true. I mean, they went to great lengths to investigate me. Went to Boston. They claimed at one point they weren't clear that I went to Harvard Law School. They weren't sure I was a U.S. Marine. I mean, they combed through my life like I was running for president, and they gave him a pass.
Why?
Oh, look, I'll tell you, can I just be straight with you, John? I've said this for many, many years. I believe that these leftists, these liberals, these so-called progressives are the most racist people on the planet. Black people are their pawns. They use them to get and stay in power. And as long as black people dance to their tune, they pat them on the head and they like them. But if you dare contradict their orthodoxy, then you find out what they really think about black folks. They don't like you anyway. And if you dare contradict them or disagree, oh my goodness, they don't just want to defeat your argument. They want to destroy you as a person, and that's exactly what the mainstream media set out to do to me. And I think that's I think what we're seeing with Ralph Northam, I think we're seeing the cover being pulled off of the Democrat Party and the so-called left that is always pointing the finger at racists in the conservative movement or in the Republican Party. I really believe they're covering up their own condescending, paternalistic, nasty, racist attitude toward black folks, but they don't want that to get out because they need those black voters, and they use them like people use prostitutes. When they want them for an election, they throw them a few crumbs, and then they forget about them until the next time. And now we're seeing what they really think.
We go back to the handshaking incident, E.W. Jackson, 2013, and I remember that distinctively, and I remember you coming on my show and talking about it, and it just got no play. Everybody just blew it off. Could you imagine if it were to be reversed, if you were the white Republican and Northam was the black Democrat, and you wouldn't shake his hand after a debate? Could you imagine the outrage that would have gone on nationally for that?
If it had been a white Republican refusing to shake the hand of a black liberal, it would have been front page news the very next day. Republican or conservative refuses to shake hands with black man. you know it would have been. And I have said in jest, maybe Ralph Northam thought it might rub off because he didn't want to get anywhere near me. And here again, I'm not surprised, though, because, look, John, I've seen this all my life. Since I've been a conservative, I have listened to liberals talk about black folks. I remember when I was applying to law school, and liberals would tell me, well, I wouldn't apply to Harvard Law School because, black people don't do well on standardized tests. I remember talking to people at Harvard when I was building my radio station in Boston and having liberals tell me, well, I marched with Dr. King. Now, we can't help you, but I marched with Dr. King, as if, we don't really like you or want to help you, but just so you know, we've got our racial bona fides intact. So, I've seen this stuff all my life. These folks are closet racists, and I hope that the black community wakes up to that and stops giving them their vote as if they're the second coming or something when they really don't deserve it.
What do you think about the fact that the governor didn't resign over this, and he's dug in, and we've talked to enough people now close to his administration who have told us that he's not going anywhere and he's going to ride this out. What do you think of that?
Oh, and don't forget this. I apologize. Oh, but it wasn't me. Look, I'm not surprised because, in fact, I started a project called the Stand for Truth Project, and what we are doing is exposing the radical leftists, which I really believe is Marxist and socialist mindset that has now gripped the Democrats, and power is what Marxism is all about, and I think they will do anything to get it. They will do anything to keep it, and you've got to have a crowbar to pry them loose from any hold on power, because control over people is what they live for. Because, frankly, if I may say, John, they don't care about people. They don't care about God. They don't care about babies. What do they care about? Power.
By the way, we're with E.W. Jackson. E.W. Jackson ran for lieutenant governor. He was the Republican nominee in 2013. He ran against Ralph Northam, was defeated there. Most recently, he ran in the U.S. Senate primary in 2018. I want to get back to what you said a little bit earlier, and then we'll get to the politics of this whole thing, that you're saying that progressives are utilizing the black voters as mere pawns, basically. They come at election time and give them something. How do they get out of this now? The Black Legislative Caucus has called for him to resign. The Black Caucus in D.C. has called for him to resign. Bobby Scott has called for him to resign. How does he maneuver his way out of this?
Well, look, he's put them all in a conundrum because here's what they're concerned about. They're concerned about the fact that the possibility that black voters will look at this and say, well, wait a minute. I voted for him. We're voting for these Democrats, and this is the way they really think. This is what they really believe. And they can't afford, John, if the Democrat Party loses its nearly monopolistic control over black voters, they're done. They're done. They can't win nationwide elections, and in many states where you have significant black voters, numbers of black voters, they can't win statewide elections. They're done. And so they have to do everything in their power to preserve that. And so going after Ralph Northam is something they absolutely have to do. And frankly, if he holds on, we may be looking at the reversal of the forward movement that the left has been having in Virginia, because this is going to awaken conservative voters, it's going to awaken Christian voters, this whole debacle, and it may well shift a bunch of black voters away from a Democrat Party that has taken them for granted for a generation.
I don't think he's going to resign, and the consequences of it, as you say, I think can shift the balance of electoral power. I wouldn't have given the Republicans a 50-cent chance in maintaining the Speaker's gavel, maintaining the majority in the House a week ago. 1 week ago today, I would have given them almost a 0% chance, maybe 1% after the redistricting and everything else. Now, I think they're the favorite after a week of what's gone on. Let's get to Northam's support for the Delegate Kathy Tram third trimester anything goes in the birth canal bill, which I got to tell you, EW, there's a lot of pro-life people like me, but it's just not their issue. Roe v. Wade's not going to get overturned. I get the whole thing. I understand it. We kind of move on to something else. But for a lot of people like me, that this was not our major issue, man, that was just a bridge too far, and it was frightening. And I think it's got a lot of people upset that, wow, like, why do they even need this? I mean, Tim Kaine nailed it when he said, why on earth do we even need this? And he's a progressive. I mean,
well, look, they don't want people to see just how radical they are about abortion. And here again, see, you know, if the left told the truth about everything they believe, here again, they'd lose every election because nobody would vote for them, or very few would. And what we've now seen is the cover being pulled off of just how radical they are about abortion. Because, look, reasonable people can disagree on the physiology and the biology of abortion, and it can be harder to make the case in the minds of some who are approaching it on a strictly intellectual basis when you start talking about the early stages of gestation. But when you get to the point where you're arguing that there ought to be willy-nilly, no consequences, no restrictions on aborting a baby at the moment before birth, or allowing a baby, as they've done in New York, they've taken away the restrictions that allow for an intended abortion if the baby is born alive, to be given medical care. Now that baby can be allowed to die because that was the intention and will of the mother and the doctor. I mean, most thinking people say, I don't need to believe in God. I don't need to believe in the sacredness of life in the sense that maybe Christians talk about it to know there's something wrong with that. Mm-hmm. But I think this is the way a lot of these leftists think, and I'm just glad it's being exposed for what it is now. And you're right. I think it's awakened a lot of people, and a lot of people like you who may feel like, well, it's important, but it's an issue that's kind of already been decided, yes, and states will sort of fight it out. But now they're saying, well, hey, wait a minute, maybe we do need to rethink this. This is going too far.
What you just said is exactly it, and I think it's going to awaken a group of people. You nailed it, E.W. Jackson. It's the fear of, well, what the hell else do they want to do? And, of course, now it's playing out with presidential candidates talking about 90% income taxes, and they're also talking about making private health insurance illegal and more restrictions. And you start to think, what exactly are they looking for? Open borders, et cetera, is a debate that we've had for some time. But it's just amazing to me. So if Northam stays in power, and I have no confidence that he's going to resign, what are the consequences in Virginia? What happens?
Well, look, I think it's difficult to predict, but I would say this. I think instead of what you just said, which is, by the way, a week ago I would have agreed with, I was looking at Virginia saying, man, it looks like we're about to lose the legislature, and who knows what comes after that. I think that we're seeing a cataclysmic shift in the political seismic plates in Virginia, and I would predict we're going to hold on. When I say we, the Republicans, conservatives, are going to hold on to the House and hold on to the Senate, and may even increase their margins a bit. Some of these districts that might be marginal are going to now go their way. We may be looking at a complete reversal of the 10-year plus trend going toward the Democrat Party in Virginia. That may be going a little bit too far yet, but this could be the beginning of something major.
I think you're right. I can feel it. I can feel it in the air. I started to feel it last week over the third term abortion bill with Kathy Tram, and then the way the governor on the radio station outlined it like he was ordering up a black cup of coffee at Dunkin' Donuts and a bagel. I mean, it was just unbelievable, the coldness with which he went through that, and no emotion. And it was like, okay, here's what I have to do. One of the things that bothers me about the governor, and I got to go, is that, the first Republican that Ralph Northam ever voted for was Ralph Northam. And he has changed his position in a lot of different ways for expediency. He almost became a Republican when it was advantageous for him to do that, when he was a state senator and they offered him all sorts of power when he would have flipped the balance of power. A tweet came out and he backed off it. A lot of the positions he has, you don't know whether he believes it or not. And I think this is just one more. You start to look at this guy and you're saying, what the hell does he believe other than in himself and his power?
Yeah.
I mean,
and John, I don't think the people of Virginia, and I don't think Americans want socialists and Marxists running our government. When Stacey Abrams said, well, I'm tired of hearing about the free market and free enterprise. And when we're hearing 90% tax rates and one single payer health care, I think it's clear that the Democrats are doing maybe what they have tended to do, overplaying their hand. And I say just keep going, because I think the more they do, the more the voters of Virginia and the voters in our country are going to say, you know what, no, that's not the Democrat Party. That's not a Democrat Party that I can vote for.
E.W., you nailed it. Thank you for being with us, E.W. Jackson. I appreciate
Thank you,
it.
John.